Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Hey, hello,
Everyone.
Dan. He's back,
Okay.
baby.
All right, great. Hang on a sec. Let me hit the clip and
This Saturday night on SBS. It's the Bunga Bunga to end all Bunga Bungas. Watch the funeral of Silvio Berlusconi live and unpaid for. See the mafia give a 21-gun salute into the side of a black Mercedes full of political enemies, while Berlusconi's open casket is paraded down the street as the Italian Revenue Agency showers it with shredded tax returns. Then the traditional ceremony of passing a nondescript paper bag stuffed with cash to a lawyer who will then pass it to a policeman who will then order his unit to cast Berlusconi's coffin into the wet concrete foundations of a highway off-ramp that will never be completed, buried forever, much like democracy in Italy. That's Berlusconi's last Bunga Bunga. Live from 10 p.m. Saturday night on SBS.
Pizza is set to close 70 stores around the world. Business analysts are saying that this could be start of a dominoes effect. And a defiant Donald Trump has said he has every right to store top secret documents in the toilet, claiming that he had a secure system for destroying a few of them every morning. And with interest rates rising for the 12th time in 13 months, RBA boss Phil Lowe has advised Australians to aim for a positive cash flow by getting second jobs or simply sacrificing a tenant during the next blood moon. It's the 15th of July, 2023. This is A Rational Fair. Welcome to A Rational Fair. I'm your host, former Victorian Cross recipient Dan Ilic, and this is the podcast that takes the scariest news and laughs in its face. Let's meet our fearmongers for tonight. She's an award-winning comedian and an award-winning journalist, which makes her one award better than us. From the Schmidt Guys podcast, it is the highly decorated Ange Lavoipierre. Ange, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Did you call it shite guys to Dan? Was that a slip of the tongue, or is it my earpods dropping out?
Schmidt Guys? I'm pretty sure I said Schmidt Guys.
Okay, good. I was just like, I feel like we need to clear that up at the top.
We don't abide anti-Semitism.
And, for Schmidt Guys, you kind of dive into the deep, dark corners of the internet. Do you need a license for
that? They've revoked mine. But I'm just hoping that no one notices. Please don't say anything.
You did an old left turn at 4chan when you should have gone right like the rest of them. Excellent. And now, also, our next guest may be celebrating his slow progression from his mid-30s to his late 30s later this week. But thanks to his 6-month-old daughter and doctors and 3 hours of treatment a day, he feels like he's in his mid to early 30s. It's birthday boy Lewis Hobba.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Yes, that's right. Thanks to the doctors, they've taken me back to before back pain, before grey hairs, before eye bags. I've never looked more like I'm 33.
Before your interest in interest rates. That is something.
Yeah, although thankfully I do still live in Sydney and will never be able to afford a house, so interest rates remain as irrelevant to me as ever.
Oh, very good. How's everyone going? How are you, Ange?
Have we lost Ange, or is that my internet?
I reckon that could be Ange. How are you, Lewis? Let's talk to you.
I'm well, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm well. I'm thriving. Look, I am losing my mind a little just with sleep and whatnot. People don't often talk about this, but babies they don't work on your schedule. They live their own life.
Oh.
I mean, it is like
this is all good gear. This is all good gear. I feel like there's a column in Huffington Post waiting for you to be written.
People don't talk about this, but their sleep is quite bizarre. But no, honestly, like people love babies. I don't know if people like the strangers love babies, and every day for Olive is like Ferris Bueller's day off. Like she just leaves the house, and everything that happens to her is like the greatest thing in the world. Like she was walking through Alex and Oliver walking through David Jones yesterday. The pianist who's like, the one who's always playing in David Jones, just like called her over. He's like, what's her favorite song? And they're like, Old MacDonald. He's riffing out Old MacDonald. He's just like, everywhere she goes, people are like, bring this child over here and let me turn her day into the greatest day ever. And you're like, if you can just get into like the slipstream of a baby's life, you can actually have a glorious time.
Oh, right. So have you been channeling this whole motive? Have you been getting into like every day is a brand new day? Every experience is a brand new experience because you have a baby?
I've got like a couple of I'm like, you know how there's like hot privilege? She's got like baby privilege. So everywhere she goes, everyone's like, look at this baby, bring this baby, and look how adorable she is. And if you can just be like, I'm like E from Entourage, but for a baby. Like, you know, people are like, they look at the baby and they're like, get this baby and cross the velvet rope. And then they're like, are you with the baby? I'm like, yeah, I'm with the baby. And they're like, get in here, you loser. And it's I'm learning to love the life of a baby Entourage.
Oh, yeah, a baby can get you into anywhere. That's great.
Honestly. Yeah. It reminds me of a time I was in New York once, and it was like the most New York story ever. There was a dog bar. And you show up and it's just for humans and dogs to go drinking. And the person I was hanging out with had a like a celebrity dog, like it was an Instagram famous dog. And we were walking along with this dog, and the bouncer yelled at the dog, "Yo, Penelope!" and then made us skip the line and brought us to the front of the line in that dog bar. And I was like, man, this is incredible.
Because you had a dog?
Because we were with the cool dog. We were with the famous dog. The dog helped us skip the line.
Have you ever found a bouncer reject Olive yet? Hey, you can't come in here. Not in those booties.
No, man. They love to do gear with like, oh, bloody hell, how much has she had? And then they love it. And
yep. Can we card her? You know.
Yeah,
you don't look 18.
Yeah.
Mom,
do you ever feel like, I mean, do you ever get jealous of the baby?
Of course. Of course. I'm a show pony. She's getting so much more attention than me.
Yeah.
But, you know, what are you going to do? You can't fight the child.
No, it's not frowned upon.
I've checked the laws and they do not like it.
When she's of comprehending age as to what national radio is, do you think she'll be excited that you were once a national radio broadcaster?
I think radio will have died a long death by then, and it will be like saying that I used to work at like a travel agent, or I used to like
you used to have a podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, oh yeah.
You're gonna have to explain a few things about like what you're gonna have to explain what the radio is before you can like there's gonna be a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was like YouTube without pictures. It was like TikTok, but it went for 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what's better. I mean, it might just be quicker to say that you're unemployed or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, which is kind of true. Like,
which is what we all want our parents to be: unemployed, wealthy, independently wealthy people.
Independently wealthy is the polite term, I think, Dan.
Yeah, I wish. I don't think I'm going to be handing over a property portfolio that I wisely invested in during my time of underpaid youth radio.
You can hand her a carefully curated bunch of Splendor in the Grass lanyards.
Yeah. A lot of old merch, and some photos of me with people long dead.
All right, let's get stuck into the fears. This week's first fear. According to Gizmodo, US intelligence has amassed sensitive and intimate data on nearly everyone. They've done it legally. Apparently, in order to tap your phone, they actually need a warrant signed by a judge, but they can't do that at scale. So what they do is they tap their credit card and buy millions of people's phone data from commercial data brokers. And this is like a loophole that's been open for ages, like 7 to 10 years. US governments, and finally, like the US government has kind of been embarrassed about the behavior of the US government. And so the Office of the National Intelligence Director has released this report hoping that Congress will close the loophole on these laws. But it's so strange. Fearmongers, are we surprised? Do we just operate knowing that the government knows everything anyway?
Yeah, I guess like to a large extent, right? Like I feel like no one is surprised by this. They're like, yeah, that checks out. Like no one's like, I'm appalled. You know, people expect this to be the case. Although I think it's a matter of degrees, right? Like people expect a degree of surveillance, and then sometimes they're surprised, and the people like the people at the 5G march turn out to be right, like once every 3 years. And I think this is one of those times where like, and I just hope that this doesn't lead people to think that like vaccines are made of like 5G or whatever. I don't know. I
Well,
can't
it
remember
will.
what their
I mean,
theory
it will.
The 5G conspiracies are a conspiracy theory of now. Like, I feel like the conspiracy theory that the government, man, is watching everything you do, man, is like from the late 90s. Like, I feel like
It's like we got bored of that one, like, do you remember that big, and it was quite anti-Semitic as well, this big anti-Semitic documentary from about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And it was like, the banks, they exist to take your money and they put you in debt. And everyone, like, there were a bunch of people who maybe like didn't know the news or whatever at the time, who were like, I don't know, 19, and maybe it was like one of the early, it couldn't have been 20 years ago. So I feel like it was on YouTube. People were like, oh, that's crazy. Have you seen this thing? And like, banks are evil. And like, and I think I was a journalist at the time, like a very like baby journalist, but I was like, yeah.
That's their business model. Yeah.
And this is that story. But for then it's like, we sort of, it's like, yeah, we this is like a real dog bites man thing,
Yeah.
Is it, do we know what kind of intel they've got?
Apparently it's like anonymized, like it's anonymized rather. So it's just a giant swathes of data that's been so-called anonymized, but you can still tell when a group of people have been at a protest, or you can still tell when a group of people have kind of been doing other stuff as a whole.
So it's location data. It's like where they've been.
Where they've been and what they're looking at on the phones, I guess kind of their internet access as well. Like, my data would be so boring if the government saw it. It'd be like, oh, look, I'm afraid Dan Ilic has been sourcing parts to enrich his Dyson vacuum cleaner. According to his location data, it's the third time this week he's been conspiring with a contact known only as Pie Face.
Actually, if you could send me that Dyson link, I need a new cap for my filter, but I'll put that out in public.
I've been scrolling eBay for the last couple of days, Lewis, and let me tell you, the prices of Dyson products are ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, it's not surprising. Like this American government, obviously with Snowden and all, like, there are so many times where they've just been like, oh yeah, we have been accumulating data on all of you all the time, but it doesn't seem to help them predict anything. Like, I feel like the Americans have been gathering a lot of data on Americans, and it hasn't stopped Americans stopping Americans being American. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like they're doing anything good with this data. Like, they haven't stopped the riots, they haven't stopped the killings.
They haven't stopped. Yeah, the mass gun violence. They
haven't even
over the last 20
if
years.
You are like a conspiracy theorist who's like, oh well, it's all the the right wing CIA nut jobs who, like, they're not even using it to like stop AOC. You know what I mean? Like, they're not using it to do anything. I feel like these people might just be hoarders.
Scarcity mentality gone wild. I love that.
Yeah, like they're just going to like those like storage units, and they're like, oh, maybe there's some data in here, haggling, giving someone cash to break it open. Like, you just go to their house, and they're the kind of people who just have old cars on their front lawns. They're like, there could be data in the car. We haven't opened the glove box.
Managing data is such a pain in the ass. Like, we are three geriatric millennials. We know what it's like to move shit from one hard drive to another hard drive, to have a backup of that hard drive at your mum's place, and then to have a backup of that hard drive. It's imagine doing that for the data points of all the Americans in the world. That's crazy.
Yeah. My favorite was so Avril Haines is the head of the department in the US so she commissioned this report and released it, and her department was responsible for it. She's kind of like the new broom who's come in to be like, we're gonna like not steal as much data anymore. She's the good guy in this story. yeah, that's her whole thing. I don't know, whatever. And this is my favorite. So the last headline associated with her before this story broke was from like a week ago, where she was warning. Oh no, sorry, this is from December in 2022, where she was saying, yeah, I think you guys should actually be really worried about TikTok collecting data on your kids. Like, it's actually really dangerous, and you should both eyes. So yeah.
What are you most worried about the government knowing about your lives?
I honestly, I kind of assume if they wanted to know, they could. And like, I don't I'm not really. If someone was like, "Oh, they know everything about you," I'd be like, obviously, it's wrong, and I should be more angry, but I wouldn't be that surprised.
I've totally given up on protecting
Yeah.
my data at all. Like I really have. I guess I've just kind of taken an open book policy and started saying things on air. Like most of this season of Schmeikgeist was me disclosing personal information about myself, like, you know, my mental health diagnoses, being poly, like, you know,
CCV number.
yeah, just like bank stuff, like, you know, just cool, like cool fun details. And you know, and I'm like, if I say it, then it's not illegal, right? And that's kind of what I'm going with. I think I'm probably breaking some labor laws by like being here at the ABC still, but that's it. I think, yeah, I'm eminently prosecutable, and nothing that they could steal from me would change that. That's just the case anyway.
You're breaking labor laws by working back late. Is that what you do?
I don't know how to leave the. I haven't left the building in a while.
That's how they get
the maybe like if we get to a point where everyone follows the sort of like confessional comedian approach of like on January 1st, everyone just does a big purge. It's almost like it'll be like Catholic confession, but just like on some sort of blog where we all just like, here's the fucked up shit I did this year. Good luck, government.
It'll be like that scene.
Your browser history.
It'll be like that scene from V for Vendetta where everyone just like takes off, like everyone shows up and takes off their mask. And they're like, "You can't shoot us all." It'll be like that, but for like drug crime and things.
Yes, it's the I am Spartacus of Pornhub searches.
This week's Second Fear: Tony Abbott, John Howard are joining forces with Jordan Peterson to figure out the meaning of life. Yes, finally, thank goodness. The Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, which is funded by a bunch of right-wing billionaires who've invested in a thing called GB News, which is a 24-hour news service, which has less viewers than this podcast, which isn't that hard, actually. Well, this podcast I found out this week has more listeners than Breakfast on Radio National. The owners have basically made all of their money from Russian fossil fuel oligarchs, and they actually believe we at the ARC do not believe that we are necessarily or inevitably teetering on the brink of apocalyptic disaster. That's because they're only watching GB News. And we posit instead that men and women of faith and decisiveness made in the image of God can arrange their affairs with care and attention so that the abundance and opportunity could be available for all, which is code for let's mine and drill, baby, everything. It's a kind of a very controversial take to go against other leaders of faith like the Pope and King Charles, who have to say the opposite about that. But, you know, so be it. Folks, are we excited about John Howard and Tony Abbott and Jordan Peterson solving the meaning of life?
I really enjoyed the pitch, like that's what we're doing, like, because if you read down, like, and who's reading further, I mean, really, but if you
who's
like,
reading past the headline, the headline's good enough. You don't need to read
like,
anything else.
And I'm out, you know. But like, if you do read further, it's like, oh yeah, and like, you know, heterosexuals only, and like, yeah, nuclear family, and like, child-centered, fossil fuels, yeah. And then, but like, if you just read the top, it's like, yeah, the meaning of life. It's like, it's got real, it's not a party, it's a gathering, like that you would say to your mom. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, this is, it's not, it's like, it's just nice, and we're gonna have, we'll probably watch some movies, like, I don't know, maybe Passion of the Christ, I don't know, and that's, yeah. But then, fine print, and also, like, you know, am I really in, like, my attention span is so bad that I'm like, like anything below the first 4 pars, I'm calling the fine print. Like, I just realized that, and that's bad. That's bad. I'm a journalist, but the fine print, very different. Not just the meaning of life, is it? It's a little more than that.
It's a little bit more than that. Yeah. I don't know if you saw the video, but there was one of the founders was talking about how they are really concerned about climate alarmism and things like that. But also it's they're also really concerned about elitists gathering to force their will upon populations. And I couldn't help but think, isn't this this group of people what you're trying to do? Isn't this it? Aren't you the elitists that are trying to scare us all through the media?
You're not suggesting they're accusing other people of doing the very thing they themselves are doing, are you, Daniel?
That's exactly what I'm doing.
One of the first classic principles of which Russian was it? Someone who you don't want to be associated with.
It's several layers of irony, though, obviously, because we are also like a shadowy elite, and we're gathering here talking about them gathering there talking about another shadowy elite. So it's kind of like,
yeah.
Can I just say, if this is what it feels like to be elite, like renting a Sydney house that I can't
shadowy
heat.
elite, shadowy elite.
I mean,
I'm looking at the live YouTube stream at the moment. I think we're down from 12 to 1. So we lost a lot of people in the last 23 minutes.
Admittedly, that does feel a bit like GB News. I did see that Tim Smith, friend of the show, appeared on GB News. Did you see that this week?
I did. I saw he was reporting on Ukraine as a news reporter. Tim Smith, former disgraced Victorian MP on GB News, reporting on what's happening in the streets of Ukraine.
Yeah, and he also was talking a bit about Australia.
To his credit, though, he knows a lot about defence, so he's very good.
He was also talking a lot about Australia's renewed love of the monarchy. So he's a guy who's really got his finger on the pulse, I think.
Oh God, these people have their finger on the pulse too. ARC, the what are they called? The Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. One of the things they want to overcome is young people's cynicism about capitalism, which segues us nicely to talking with Ange Lavoipierre. Ange, your latest episode, well, the episode of 2 episodes ago, was so fascinating. It was about how Gen Z and millennials are basically giving up on capitalism.
Yeah, and it's so good of them to ultimately, because really it can be hard to find data, and if they're saying it, then I guess it must be true. But there was 2018 polling that showed, and this is Australian polling, by the way, so 59% of millennials at that point had given up on capitalism. They believed that it had failed. And of course, it's just been peachy for capitalism since then in Australia. So you can only imagine that number, 59%, has dropped, there being no housing crisis or cost of living crisis. So but at that point in 2018, 59% of Australian millennials, and I guess we kind of, we wanted to work out if that meant if it was going anywhere, like what happens to all that rage, because it wasn't, and when you're setting out to, I don't know, you're setting out to make a story and you're like, oh, this is going to be there are some elements that are predictable. We're going to go do some voxies. We're going to go out onto the streets and just ask some random young people what they think about capitalism. And I'm I'm just going to get great grabs that way. I just know that people are going to sound off the second I'm hey, capitalism. And they did exactly what we thought they would, and exactly what we wanted, which was just be it's shit. And I don't know. Yeah, you could lip sync it, but that was an amazing part, and I loved this part of the episode where you kind of threw up that old maxim that when you're 25 you're a socialist, but by the time you're 35 you're a capitalist. But now that's changing because all the 35-year-olds are millennials and they don't have anything. Yeah, but here's the thing: this is what I didn't realize is that that maxim, if you're not a socialist at 25, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative at 35, you have no brain. So it
that's
goes.
Right. Yeah.
That has actually, I mean, not the brain and heart thing, the that's not medically proven at all, but but the that drift to the right has held up in every generation, and
even ours.
No, we're the exception.
Oh, okay. Millennials have changed that.
We're the first ones,
right.
And because it's not just we're not just at 35 now. This is the funny thing that I've had in promoting this episode, talking about this episode all around the ABC. They're right, because millennials must be 32 by now, and I'm no, we're 42. 42
40.
is
the
oldest millennial.
They're aging out of the demographic of ABC Sydney. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, no, they're nearly old enough to enjoy watching Miriam Margolyes do shit.
Well, we'll see. But they're like 42 now, and they're not. So the 2022 election would have been like a perfect time for millennials historically to start voting for the coalition, but they went the other way. There was like a 20-something% swing. Don't have the figures handy, but like a massive swing against the coalition, more pronounced in the millennial cohort, obviously, and Gen Z are kind of just off the map. They are, and this is on the like the kind of authoritative like main survey that we trust in Australia, the Australian Electoral Survey. Gen Z are the most left wing that any generation has been out the gate, like in their voting patterns. So it's one thing because we're always saying like, oh, Gen Z, they're more progressive than their forebears, but it's actually playing out at the ballot box as well. Anyway, yeah. So
all the worry, all the whatever it is, citizens for responsible citizenship or whatever it is, worried about like the rise of Antifa are right.
Yeah, they're not wrong.
They're just worried about their own place in the world, their own existing power hierarchies, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And when you look at the quality of people who are joining that particular one, like Tony Abbott, John Howard, they're not the new kids on the block. Admittedly, Andrew Hastie signed up too.
One of the interesting part though of that, like maybe the more interesting part, because on some level I think we all have an innate sense that people are pissed about capitalism, and there are a bunch of interesting ways that plays out online, my favorite of which being like a drama that unfolded about Depop resellers where you get accused of being a landlord if you've been to if you're taking stuff from op shops and then selling it for a markup on Depop, and just the fact that everyone, they were using words like, oh, you're gentrifying op shops, or you're gentrifying thrift stores, and just like absolutely dragging, like we're talking like thousands of comments on this one video that
can I give you a little secret?
What?
Sometimes I look in shops with my significant other, and we buy things and then we sell them at other shops as a hobby for more. Does that make me a landlord?
A landlord! Oh, in our very midst.
So surprising. That's so out of character. Like, not even the capitalism element, which is like, hey, you're a podcaster, you got to make a living. But it's more the like going into clothes and having like an eye to upsell things. It feels very off. It surprises me about you.
What's the markup, Dan? Like, are we talking like 200%, 500%? Like, you mean like a price for price? No, tell me.
30%, maybe 40%. Oh no! Actually, more like 200%. Yeah,
but it's like these are clothes. Like the amount of money you're doing here is like you are
minimal.
Not a landlord. You are not causing a clothing crisis.
One of the things I loved about this episode, Ange, is that you made the point that all these young people online complaining about each other only enshrines current power structures to the point where, while all the young people are fighting each other, the people who hold the power are still kind of maintaining the power.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things going on. You've got, on the one hand, this so everyone's like splitting from the center, but they're not uniformly crumbling left. So in Australia, it is a little bit more pronounced, but you also kind of see, for example, we now have like MAGA communists. That's a thing. You have these really idiosyncratic bundles of beliefs that never belong together. Like people who are like, yeah, like climate change is a huge problem and we're really worried about it, but gun rights are probably the way to solve it. Like, and like people who are like, they're like 16, and also they might run, and they're also very, very schooled in like political theory. They'll like, they know more isms than I know. Like I can't even like, there was like, one of the people we interviewed for the podcast was like, yeah, so like, I spoke to this like primitivist 16-year-old. I'm like, I could not I could not tell you what a primitivist believes, although I subsequently found out that it might be Ted Kaczynski. Anyway, so it's
How appropriate that episode went to air, considering he passed away this week.
I know I might have made it happen, but it's yeah. So they're crumbling to the edges. Not all of it is uniformly to the left, and so you kind of have this whatever a coalition would look like, a broad coalition that was like a critical mass in the electoral system that would, I don't know, overthrow neoliberalism.
I feel like that's a big thing to say. I mean, when these kids are like 12, 13, they're still kind of experimenting and thinking about, politics and their place in the world and how politics works. But, by the time they're like voting age, maybe that's a little bit different,
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, the beliefs that those people have at the moment, there are no candidates really for them to vote for. So, and in an electoral system like the US, obviously, they just don't vote. But what is interesting is that we kind of have a bit of a blueprint for this in the form of millennials, candidates such as AOC becoming elected, people who fall well outside the neoliberal norm, people who are not saying the current system works, that those people have a chance. And so you might end up seeing the political system mirror what has happened in every other part of society, which is this fragmentation. So you don't have two centrist parties fighting it out. You potentially have a bunch of fairly weird candidates who believe a range of things, who have been elected on smaller on smaller and smaller numbers. But anyway, but it's the main problem is
I'm here to announce I'm running for president of the United States, representing the Decent Price for Dyson Replacement Parts Party.
You got one vote, buddy.
Oh dear.
And thanks so much for joining us on Irrational Fear. That was super interesting. And you can go and listen to Schmeitgeist wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great, great series.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That is it for Irrational Fear. Big thanks to Ange Lavoipierre and Lewis Hobba. What would you like to plug? Lewis, got anything to plug?
No, not currently. No. No. Check back in soon, Dan.
Ange, you plugging anything?
Yeah. Well, apart from the podcast, I'm actually hosting and have programmed the Vivid Sydney's first ever comedy debate this weekend. We're debating monogamy because someone's got to, and the winner gets to write the laws from now on about what relationships are legal. Because that's worked out very well.
Aren't you in the big pockets of Polly? And I do say pockets.
Yeah, I'm totally biased, but I'm not gonna debate. I'm just gonna judge it, so it should be fine. So my bias won't have any bearing on the result.
That's great.
But we've got.
That's cool. I'm just the judge.
I'm just the judge. That's what they call it in debating, right? The judge, the referee.
Have you thought about a post ABC career at PwC? You'd be great there.
Yeah. Wait, let me get a pen. No, we've got. So it's Norman Swan. It's Norman Swan, the famous comedian Norman Swan,
and huge fuck machine.
Yeah, who I'm getting him to argue for against monogamy, I should say. Alex Lee, James Colley, Annalise Constable, Elfie Scott, Anna Piper Scott, no relation. And yeah, so it's a ridiculous lineup. It's 6:30 on Saturday evening at the Sydney Vivid Ideas Exchange, if anyone's around.
Excellent. Very good. I'd like to plug Lewis's birthday. Happy birthday, Lewis.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Yay. Thank you very much. I do love gifts. If anyone would like to send me a gift, I will accept them.
Road Mike, could we please send Lewis a birthday gift? He needs
I told you off air, Dan. They've got 2 weeks to give me a bunch of free shit, or else I'm publicly buying a bunch of their competitors' merchandise.
While I'm talking about Rode, big thank you to Rode for supplying most of our gear.
I'd like to say a big thank you to Shaw Microphones.
No, we don't use Shaw. We use Rode, the Australian brand Rode, Australian Ethical, also a sponsor of this podcast. Our Patreon supporters, please, we need a few more. We had a few drop out while I was sick. So please jump on patreon.com/A-Rational-Fear. There you'll get to hear it there you'll get to see the link for the live stream. Also, you will get access to a version of the podcast without an ad. Also, you'll get early uploads of videos that are almost complete, so you can criticize them. It's
You get to
really
live stream all of Dan's future surgeries.
That's right.
Mm,
Yes, my
mm.
surgery they got bounced back to September because I got COVID, by the way. So this is why my surgery got pushed back. I hosted a gig for Russell Crowe, and I'm pretty sure I got it from a party afterwards where I was sharing a joint with RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. That's what. I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure your big government data doesn't have nothing on that until we do the transcription for this podcast and it goes on the internet.
I was texting you all night as that was happening, and I was on holidays, and I was trying to have like phone silence for a few days.
Oh no!
And I broke the silence because I'm like, I just need to know everything that's happening at this gig, blow by blow. And when you texted me that the RZA was hanging out backstage, and that Russell hadn't turned up to his own gig because the Rabbitohs were losing, I was just like, this is my favorite story. I would do I would like get on a plane and leave my at the time like 4-month-old child to come and witness this story. It makes me so happy.
We're recording Irrational Fear on Gadigal land in the Eora Nation. Sovereignty was never ceded. We need the treaty. Let's start the show. Let's end the show. Hang on, let me do that again. I'm trying a new format out. I did some consulting. I had a professional podcast consultant come in and rip to shreds our show. And they said, we've got too many voices and we need to start with the good audio at the top. No, don't do any rambling right at the top. So that's why, we started at the top with a sketch, and you said you could move all the other stuff to the bottom. So that's why we're doing that now. So let me just finish that acknowledgement of country again. We record Irrational Fear on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. Sovereignty was never ceded. We need a treaty. Thanks very much, everyone. Until next week,
guys.
there's something to be scared of. Bye.
Thank you.
Send me your audio. Thanks, everyone.
Got one.
Yay.
Thanks, team.